Hey everyone, Adam here's the Wizard Podcast. I have a really awesome interview for you today. I got to sit down with Gary Jones, who is, if you check his IMDb, he's done a little bit of everything, or a lot of everything. Primarily was, the bulk of his resume, I shouldn't say primarily, the bulk of his resume is in visual effects, and he's worked on some awesome stuff, including a couple of my favorites, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. He actually kind of got his start working for Sam Raimi in those early days. Gary was inspired by the 70s style action, slow burn, tense, awesome movies of the 70s into the 80s, including horror, including, the kind of off the wall action movies that are still known for. He talks about Charles Bronson a few times in the interview, and you can see that inspiration in his newest movie, Escape from Death Block 13. It's an absolutely bonkers action movie, really cool stuff, and he just kind of gives a master class in getting things done in this interview. I barely say a word, which is the best, because this is all about the guests, of course. So I should stop running my mouth, because Gary's a fascinating guy. I hated to cut this one off. I could have talked to him for another 5 hours easily. Enjoy. Hey everybody, Adam here's the Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Gary Jones to talk about his newest movie, Escape from Death Block 13. How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing good, Glad to be with you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, because you've had a super extensive career before we even get into your movie. I always like to ask creative people to go all the way back to the beginning and kind of what was your spark and how did you get your start?
Wow, I kind of go back to I my growing up really was the 70s for me. I mean, it was pretty very young, but it was really watching all the movies. Back in the day, we'd get people don't remember this, but we'd get a newspaper on Sunday, and in there would be a TV guide, right? Be a little book, tell you what was on TV. And I'd go through that, and I'd find all the movies that we wanted to watch, right? And of course, I loved all the science fiction movies and the action movies. So I would highlight all the movies. And then at dinner time, my dad would say, "Hey, what's on this week?" And I go, "Okay, Bridge on the River Kwai is on Thursday night, The Dirty Dozen's on Monday at 6, So I just list everything. Godzilla's on at 3:30 in the afternoon, And I'd highlight these things, and back in the day, not now everything's available, right? Whatever you want to watch is there. Well, back in the day, like if King Kong was on or The Dirty Dozen, you'd see it on TV once, and then you'd have to wait at least a year to see it again, right? So it was a special event, So I grew up watching those movies, and my buddies are outside, doing sports or working on cars. And I'm sitting in front of the TV watching these movies, and it just was a great escape. And I thought, God, I want to do that. I want to make movies. And I started watching I got a hold of some behind the scenes stuff, where I saw them making movies. And then I started to realize, wow, it'd be great to be in them, and be an actor. But then I'm like, wow, it'd be better to actually make it, right? So I sort of focused in on the director and went, that's the guy, It's like he gets to do all of it. So it was really early on. I just enjoyed the movies. And then I had an artistic background. At one time, I wanted to be an animator for Disney. I wanted to draw cartoons, but I got kind of into the movie thing, and then I really just started investigating more. And I had an artistic background, and of course, I was into special makeup effects and explosions. So I taught myself how to sculpt, and so with my artistic background, I sort of started getting into doing makeup effects and practical effects. We'd blow up the backyard, and just build miniatures, and I was really fascinated. And I found a book in the library called The Technique of Special Effects Cinematography by Raymond Fielding, I think it was. And it had a lot of clues to things, It would show behind the scenes pictures. And I'm like, I figured it out, like that's how they do it. So I really got into the special effects and into the movie making. And I had an artistic background, and that was my start. I started doing stuff on Super 8 and for my own things. And I slowly got good at stuff to where I felt comfortable enough reaching out to the local community for, there was a lot of commercials in Detroit at the time. And so I started working on commercials. I'd do like a special makeup or a pyrotechnic thing, or I'd help build a set, So it got me in, and I actually started like working on a set. And then I heard about these guys who were making this movie called Book of the Dead, Sam Raimi and Evil Dead thing. And I'm like, I read something in the newspaper, college students making a movie. Well, I tried to hunt them down, and they had already left to go down south to make the movie. So I kind of lost track of them. A year or so later, I see a thing saying college students premiering their movie, and I'm like, oh, that's that movie. Well, turns out they were only about 25 minutes from me, just up the road and cross town. So I finally hooked up with those guys after they did their Evil Dead, and they were kind of in between. And then they started a movie called Crime Wave, XYZ Murders. And so I went in there and said, hey, I can do all this stuff. I want to work with you guys. And I got on their second movie as like a PA, driving cars and stuff. But through that, I met a guy named Josh Becker and Scott Spiegel, and they were starting a movie, an action movie. I jumped on that. It was called Thou Shalt Not Kill Except. And I did all the squibs and blood and makeup effects and stuff. And so that was my entry into it. I was able to use the artistic talent to get on a set. Once I got on the set, I could watch the directors, the DPs. I could figure out how it was all done. So really, that was my entry. I wanted to make movies and I didn't know how. But by working on these other commercial sets and then these movie sets, I was able to start picking it up enough, And so I kept doing effects to get on all these other movies. And through that, I was able to develop enough skills and figure out enough about, okay, I have to figure out what I'm going to do. I got to make a movie. And you have to make a movie, your first movie, that people notice, right? It's like, you got to be audacious. It's got to be, a genre movie, a creature, a monster, or horror, whatever, just something to get noticed. I was a big fan, obviously, of Evil Dead. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like an eye opener, and I was trying to figure out where I fit in. Well, I always loved the giant monster movies. So I thought, I got to make a creature. I got to make a monster. And, me and my buddies on the assembly line were always talking about cool movies and stuff. And then mosquitoes came up, skeeters we talked about. And I'm like, wow, it just hit me, we were discussing stuff and I'm like, skeeters, giant mosquitoes. And I go, it hadn't been done, I thought that's my way in. I could make the giant rubber bugs and the mechanics, and we could get shotguns and you blow up the mosquito. And I was going to say the bloodiest movie ever made, gallons of blood exploding everywhere. And I thought people will notice that. And so that became my first movie. I thought, okay, that's my calling card. I had the special effects skills. So I went to a bunch of investors and I said, hey, look, I've never made a movie, but even if I'm a terrible director and the movie sucks, it's going to have great special effects. And they're like, and I made a giant rubber mosquito and I put it on the table with artwork. And they came in and saw that. And I said, that's our star, and they went, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. And so I got them, the money came together relatively quickly for that. And we made that movie and it opened the doors for me. And then that was my entry in. And then, of course, once I finished that movie, I realized, I figured out how to make a movie by making a movie. You think you know it all until you start on day one and you realize, what am I doing? How do I? But no, so that was my entry in, so that was it. That's how I got into it, was being on movie sets and wanting to do something and then coming up with an idea that would get noticed and then making that movie by hook or crook,
Yeah, that's super smart. I mean, even just as a kid being a fan of movies and everyone knows, oh, there's actors. And then most kids figure out, oh, there's, a director and someone's doing the camera or whatever. But for you to then go to the library, self-teach special effects, and then be like doing miniatures and stuff in your backyard, like you really took it to a whole other level.
Back in the day too, I wanted to go to college for filmmaking, but I had 5 brothers and sisters. My parents didn't have money to do that, so I got a Super 8 camera for Christmas and I just practiced with that. I did stop motion animation, big fan of Ray Harryhausen, and the Sinbad movies were huge. So Ray Harryhausen, and Toby Hooper and, all these other action directors, and that really kind of got me in. And of course, Spielberg, with Jaws, I was like, wow, he's 26, 27 years old. He's not a 50-year-old guy with a pipe, which was all the other directors I had been seeing, like they're older guys, but that's because they came up through the ranks. You didn't just walk in the door as a director, you did other things. But once I saw that, I watched like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then Jaws, I went, it's doable. You can do it at a younger age, but it's a learning curve. It was about figuring out that learning curve to get to that, so it was a challenge. And then of course with Mosquito, I had to think about, okay, I know I got the bugs, but who's going to be on screen, right?
Yeah.
And I had struck up a friendship with Gunnar Henson, the original Leatherface. We were talking on the phone and sending letters back and forth, and I thought, man, if I get Gunnar in this, and I put a chainsaw in his hands, because it had been like 20 years, right, since Chainsaw came out, and I thought, wow, Gunnar Henson with a chainsaw cutting up a bug. I mean, it's gold, right? It's like,
Right. Every horror fan's all
like,
about it.
that's Leatherface fighting mosquitoes now. So again, I was really kind of conscious of promotion, right? And what would get a distributor, what would get people excited about it. So Gunnar was a big component of that, getting him in that movie. And then I had met a buddy of mine named Ron Ashton earlier working on another movie. He was the lead guitarist for, the Stooges, Iggy Pop and the Stooges. And he had said he always wanted to be a B-movie actor. And he was a great friend. He was funnier than hell. And so I cast him in the movie too, so those two guys. And then I met another actor named Tim Lovelace, who's been a lifelong friend of mine. Met him on a commercial, did some makeup for a commercial with him. And I thought, okay. So I really rounded out the cast that way of like a guy I knew, Tim Lovelace. I was jealous because he got to play a part in the movie that I'd love to play. I want to be on screen, but I'll be behind the scenes, right? And so Tim fit the bill there and just did great. Ron Ashton was the comedy relief. He brought the humor to it. And Gunnar Henson gave us that cachet of it's Leatherface. So it was a combination with the giant bugs and all of that I got me noticed, right? And we did the movie, very low budget, very low independent movie. And we made a deal and sold it for $1 million. We had $1 million deal with the movie. Of course, we didn't get the money, the Hollywood story, but we signed the deal. The movie went out, and the distributor just made almost $1 million. At I think it was Cannes Film Festival where it premiered, and very quickly afterwards, before they could start paying us the money they owed us, they went bankrupt. So I learned like everything on that first movie. I learned how to make a movie, what to put in it to get people to notice it, back yourself up with what your skill set is. Then I always told all my investors, it's $1 million idea. And then when we sold it for $1 million, I went, this is Twilight Zone time,
Yeah, it's all falling into line.
But something's felt odd. I didn't know, and then of course when we, they gave us a small advance, and then when they went bankrupt and the movie got tied up in the courts and all the legal bullshit, and they're liquidating assets and stuff, I learned like, okay, right, you learned everything. What you didn't learn was the business side, legal, accounting, how business really works, how movies get distributed, how the money comes back. So I learned everything else, but I was shy in that area. I learned after that movie exactly what happens. So I got the full schooling on the first movie from
it sounds like it.
To figuring out how Hollywood will rip you off if you're not careful.
I'm sure it was devastating at the time, the financial side of it, but just the thought you had. I mean, one, you played to your strengths, the special effects. Right. You loved horror movies. You love those era movies. But then to round out the cast in the really calculated way you did is genius. It's like your first movie, you could have just picked 5 of your best friends because they were your friends and threw them in there.
Yeah, and it really was a conscious thing because, I mean, I was watching what attracts you to movies, There were the genre movies that didn't have names in them, but they all had a name, Like if you look at Friday the 13th, there's some recognizable people in that, They might have come from daytime television or whatever, but there was always something. And, again, we go to see stars, right? You go, if Charles Bronson's in the movie, I'm there, I see them all, So it would always be about that. Like there was always had to be the face value, and I went as far as I could. And that's the thing, is like, you have to go as far as you possibly can go to back things up, but I tell everybody that, I give them the story. I tell everybody what happened to me on that movie, new filmmakers, because they need to know. It's not enough to know how to make the movie. You got to know what the promotion is. Hey, do you have a tagline that you can sell in a trailer? Do you have face values or face people in there that people are going to recognize? Is it audacious enough to cut through the noise? And do you understand the business side? Like, it's not enough to say this is $1 million idea. Well, how do you get paid for it? You need to know all of those other things, because you go out there blind and it's just like the distributors are waiting. There's like 20 guys outside the door. You walk in, they get to look at everything and decide what they want.
Yeah.
It's not like they need you. They need
Right.
you if your movie makes a ton of money and they think we need that guy to make another one to make us another $1 million. That's rare. It's really about what can we make off this movie? How little of it can we give back to the producer? What's the best deal we can make for us? And that's just business. It's any kind of business. So that's the thing. We pour our heart and soul into making a movie because we're filmmakers, right? We're creators. What we don't do is spend enough time figuring out the business aspects of it. Like you can do a painting, you can paint a picture and spend a month painting a great picture. Well, look at the market. You're obviously you're not Picasso, you're just Bill Schwartz, whatever the name is. So it goes into a gallery, but will somebody pay more than $300 for it? You spent a month working on it. So again, it's the value of what you're doing. It's a balance. It's a balancing act.
For sure. Yeah. And it sounds like the business side, I mean, big time outsider, obviously, but it seems like you'd have to almost hire somebody to do it. But then how do you know you can trust that person? And they're not just in it for their own best interests.
Well, I mean, again, it's that thing where you got to align yourself. I mean, it's tough. You got to find people like-minded, and that's why I say like films aren't made by one person. I mean, I didn't make Mosquito by myself. I had, Tom Chaney, Eric Pasquarelli, Dave Theory. They're all my producers and film partners on it. Tom came in and helped write the script. Tom was the DP. Dave and Eric were producing and they were production managing, and Eric Pasquarelli was doing sound. I mean, it was like we're doing everything. So it is hard, but it's that thing about you will attract people if you have a talent, and you're trying to do something. If the parade's going down the road, inevitably, if you go down enough streets, people will come out and join it. And so I always tell people that's the thing too, is, find like people that want to do what you do, get a group together, and then, just figure out what the talents are, the talent sets, because everybody wants to be the director. Everybody wants to be the next big thing, but it's a team that that team helps everybody gets lifted by it a certain way, but you have to find the strengths. I had this wacky idea that I could direct, and I knew it all. I seen all the movies. I'm directing this movie, and here's my idea. And everybody's like, okay, we'll help out. We'll come aboard. Well, yeah, I couldn't have done it without all those guys, with all that crew and my partners, and the investors, the investors put in their money on the line, so it was a big, it's a challenge, but it can be done. It's a thing, a good idea.
That's the core.
Good idea wins the day. Anybody can go out in the woods and chase people around with a knife. It's woods, or then go out in the desert and whatever. It's a desert, but it's an idea. It's the idea that wins the day, and that's what'll attract everything, and the talent.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. So did how long before, since Mosquito, did you attempt to direct again? Because your career's, I mean, I don't want to say primarily, but you've done a lot of special effects work. Did Mosquito or Skeeter kind of leave a bad taste in your mouth for directing, and you kind of went back to what you knew, or was it just, oh, that kind of sucked, lesson learned, let's do it again?
No, I mean, it actually launched my career, because up to that point I had been working steadily doing effects for other people, and I worked for the Evil Dead guys. I worked on Evil Dead 2. I worked on Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 3. I did Hard Target, which they produced, Van Damme and John Woo. I got to rig squibs on that and blow things up. So no, I was always doing effects, but each film was a bit bigger, different people, learning experience. And I had told Sam Raimi and Rob Tepper to go, hey, I've got an idea for a movie I'm going to make. And I remember Sam going, great. Like, no, I'm not asking for money, right?
Right.
He goes to Sam, hey, I want to make a movie. And Sam's like, cool. Yeah, I'd like to see it when it's done, I go,
invite me to the premiere.
yeah, I said, when it's done, I'm going to send you a VHS tape. And he goes, okay, cool. So I went back to Michigan, I left California. I was finishing movies and stuff. I went back to Michigan. We put it together. We made the movie. When it was done, and I never asked those guys for money, because everybody was hitting them up. It's what happens.
Right. You don't want to Pollute
No,
the pond.
no. So I basically sent him a VHS tape and a poster, and he sends a letter back. Great, cool. And I said, I got distribution. You know, we're on the USA Up All Night channel. The Blu-rays, the VHS tapes are out everywhere. You know, in Blockbuster. And so they responded like, wow. So then I was able to move from an effects guy to a filmmaker.
Okay, very cool.
They had been doing Hercules down in New Zealand, and they were just starting up a new show called Xena Warrior Princess. And through a series of events, my buddy Josh Becker had directed for them, but he wanted to move up out of the second unit and just do main unit, recommended me. And of course, they knew me now from Mosquito. So right after Mosquito came out, I sent that to him. And it was literally 2 weeks later. It's like, hey, you interested in working on Xena, being a second unit director, go to New Zealand. I jumped aboard that. So Mosquito opened that door. And I started directing on Xena, and I did second unit for a year. And then I started doing episodes. Then I did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Sheena the Jungle Queen. So I started directing TV. And so I bounced from TV back and then back into sci-fi channel movies. I had left the effects behind at that point, right? The practical effects. But once I started doing the sci-fi channel movies, I'm like, man, I got to learn digital effects because every movie has got digital effects and I have to know it if I'm going to be doing these. And I got a movie to shoot. I was shooting in Romania. I was doing a movie called Ghouls. And we had to go way up into this castle up in Transylvania. And the prop guy forgot to bring blanks. He was doing a shootout and a chase with horses and carriages. So the producer said, hey, look, there's no blanks, you can't do the chase with guns. And I'm like, no, I got to do the chase with guns. He goes, we don't have blanks. And I said, well, I'll put them in digitally. He goes, if you do the digital effects for no money, you can shoot the scene. So, of course, I'm directing the movie. I'm like, I'll do it. So I shot the scene and everything. And then, of course, we get back, and it's editing and that. And I'm like, okay, I better learn visual effects real quick.
Yeah.
So I taught myself visual effects and I did a bunch of stuff on that. And then it snowballed. And I was keeping up on learning effects. So I self-taught myself visual effects. So I had the two different skill sets that I could understand with doing my movies. And then it kind of ballooned. I was directing and bouncing back and forth. I helped produce some movies. And then I got a call, an editor friend of mine said, hey, I got this guy that's doing a Hallmark movie, a Christmas movie, and he needs some snow. I'm like, sure, I could do that. Well, then that just turned into like a second career, I started doing snow and Hallmark movies and Lifetime movies. And, that was, 6 or 7 years of doing, I amassed tons of credits, putting snow in the background or computer monitor comps, and Lifetime movies where there'd be a muzzle flash and a tiny little bit of blood on his shoulder or something.
Right.
They would shoot a Lifetime movie where they'd have $1 million home, with plush white carpet. And the guy would get shot and roll down the stairs and he's supposed to have been shot and he's in a pool of blood. They're like, Gary, you got to put the blood in because we can't put blood on the carpet. So I'm like putting spots of blood everywhere. And so that the visual effects became the side career, which really helped me in between my movies. And then, of course, going into my movies, Axe Giant, The Wrath of Paul Bunyan, we had a giant, we had our giant monster. We put a guy in a monster suit and shot him in front of green screen and made everybody else smaller. So I was able to do all the composites on that. And I brought miniatures into it. Everything I could do, I brought into it. Muzzle flashes, pyrotechnics and stuff. So it became a staple that since I learned it, it has helped me in all my movies. And especially in Escape from Death Block 13, where we have, a lot of weapons and a lot of gunfire and squibs going off. And, stuff's expensive. One squib, it's $15 to buy the material. Well, then you got to have the pyrotechnician who's, $700-800 for the day. And you rig it and do it. And if you have to do it again, the blood goes to different places. You're spending almost $1,000 just to have one day to do a couple of squibs, So it becomes very expensive. And not to mention, it's the safety issues too. So on Escape from Death Block 13, I knew we're an independent film, which means you never have enough money to make the movie. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to load it with special effects that I know how to do, And so when we got to post, COVID hit and everything shut down, all the work dried up. And so I spent pretty much 2020 in front of computers doing visual effects for my movie. And so learning those skills, you always have to keep learning. Like I have the edit program, but I got to keep doing it. You got to learn. There's new programs, there's new cameras, so it's you always think, well, once I know how to do this, it's done. It's like, no, filmmaking, it's just a constant learning curve, right? Because technology is changing so quickly.
Yeah, you're in school forever.
And you have to be prepared for it. I got out of school. First thing I did is I'm never opening up a book again. I'm not reading anything. I'm not writing anything. Well, no, I'm doing all of this. Yeah. It's like, oh, what's this program? Oh, shoot. Before I know it, it's 14 hours to figure out how to make something work, So it's like, it's a learning curve, Some people are really adapt to it. Younger people can really pick this stuff up. The technology and the texting or coding. That was, it took me a while to understand I don't understand it. A 1 and 0. What does that mean? I know film, I can hold it in my hand, So yeah, so it's it was a process, but yeah, it's a learning curve that, I taught myself, and I couldn't be doing these movies if I didn't, so it's worked out.
Yeah, you kind of increase your budget exponentially by shouldering the load.
Well, yeah, you make these movies, whatever you do, you bring your skill set to it. If you're able to edit, if you're able to shoot, if you're able to do effects, well, you've got a bit of an edge, right? You can direct, if you can write and direct and produce, but if you can do other things, you kind of have an edge. You can put thousands and thousands of dollars worth of creativity in a movie. If you can do it yourself and you don't have to hire people, you're saving money. I mean, ultimately, in all honesty, I do a year and a half's worth of work. Well, my movie. Well, I'm not getting paid, but it's my movie.
Right.
So I will get paid at the end of the line once everybody goes out and buys this movie. And we get a couple 100,000 people pay for this movie online on demand, and great. We'll be okay. So
yeah, for sure. Was that kind of the genesis of Escape from Death Block 13? Was that you said, all right, I want to direct again. I got this, badass action movie in my head, and I can do these awesome effects. So let's just go nuts.
Well, it actually, I'm always writing ideas for movies, and it's always a challenge to get the money. Like I've been go out to LA. I talk to people about hiring me to direct or do my movies. It's a constant. A lot of times they don't call you back, or a lot of times we'll talk later. Years go by. So you're always trying to figure out how to do it. Well, I always, whenever I hit the wall and I can't make something happen, I'm like, I'm just going to go do an independent movie. I'm doing it myself. Because I know once I start, I'm always going to finish. It's always happened. And I know once I start that parade, people will start falling in. Well, I live not too far from the prison we used. It's called the Ohio State Reformatory, which is the Shawshank prison. It's where they shot the Shawshank Redemption. So, and I knew the guys that run it. And I'm like, man, I could do a prison escape movie there. It's such a cool place. So I always wanted to do an action movie, an escape movie. Of course, I love Escape from Alcatraz. But I saw a movie called Brawl in Cell Block 99 with Vince Vaughn. And S. Craig Zeller did this movie, and he did Bone Tomahawk and Dragged Across Concrete. And as soon as I started his movies and I watched that Brawl, I went, holy shit. This guy is doing that retro 70s movies I love, I grew up on. It's the movies I wanted to make when I was a kid. And I'm like, it's not about technology. It's about the people, simple code of honor. So I saw that and I'm like, yeah, I gotta do my prison movie. And so I had a rough idea and I started putting it all together. And then I met Robert Bronzy Kovacs. My buddy was doing, Jeff Miller was doing a movie called Death Kiss. And Rene Perez was the writer, director, producer on it. And Rene had met or had found out about Robert, I think through the internet. Robert was doing Wild West shows in Spain. So I think Rene had the idea of bringing him over to do movies. And Jeff Miller called me up and goes, hey, I got this guy. He looks just like Charles Bronson, and we're going to do Death Kiss. I go, Death Kiss? Are you ripping off Death Wish? And I said, dude, you can't do that. That's sacrilegious, Well, everything. I told him he was crazy. I hang up the phone and I thought about it. I'm like, nah, you know what? It's not a bad idea because we love Charles Bronson. And, I still want to see Charles Bronson making movies, right? Well, you're not going to get that, obviously. But so I called Jeff back. I said, yeah, I'll help you finish the movie and I'll do effects on it. And I came in as a producer, and they knocked it out. Renee put it all together, and um, it's a good little tight movie. But it came out. It made money. It was doing good. I met Robert at the Texas Frightmare Film Festival. They were promoting the movie, and I had mentioned to him I wanted to do this movie. So I met him. We had drinks in the bar. I told him all about this movie, and we made a handshake deal to do 3 movies. I said, "You got to be in this escape movie." And then after I met him and I talked to him a bit, I had him read some lines of dialogue. Then I kind of rewrote the script because his character actually came from down south up to Ohio to collect a debt. Well, once I met Robert, I'm like, no, this guy's coming from Hungary because that's where Robert's from. I'm like, no, play it like what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's Hungarian. He's coming over here to collect the debt. His dialogue and the way he talks is all natural. It's like, that's what you're going to get. Right. So I completely rewrote it for him. And I got it done pretty quickly, but basically we had a window of opportunity at the prison in July. And then in November, there were like 2 little windows because they do tours, they do haunts, they do all kinds of stuff there, concerts, and they're always booked. And so I had a bit of window of opportunity, and I'm like, okay, in about 3.5, 4 months, that window's there. So I had to make a decision. Do I make this movie in 3 or 4 months? And I just hit the ground running, got the script done, started talking to investors, started putting the crew together. So it really was in about 4 or 5 months we were shooting that movie, from the idea of like really making a solid idea on a plan to shooting. It's the fastest I've ever done a movie.
That's insanely fast.
Yeah, and what I found is if you want to get something done, you can talk about it. But if you put a date on a calendar, or you get up in the morning and you make a list of what you're going to do today at 2:00, I'm going to go here, I'm going to change the tire at 3, whatever. You put that list up and you write it down and you put it up there, it shames you to do it. You have to do it. Because then at the end of the day, if you look at your list and you didn't do anything, you go, I'm a lazy son of a gun. I didn't get anything done.
Right.
So when you put that pin in the calendar, and then I called everybody and I made deals without having the money in place, without having the script 100% there, but I knew I would get there. So I made all the calls, and now I couldn't go back, right? I couldn't call people, sorry, I screwed up. We ain't going to do it. I booked Robert's flight, I mean, I did all these things that sort of set it all in motion. And, once you do it, you have to do it, right? And I mean, I knew I was going to get there. And I said, well, if I don't find investors, I'll put my own money in. It's going to happen. And had a really good couple of years of work doing effects and producing for other people. So I banked a bunch of money, and I'm like, boom, I just threw that money down, and we took off, and made that movie. So it was something I always wanted to do. And I wanted to make an homage, a throwback to the movies I grew up with. Having Bronzy in it, who looks just like Charles Bronson, could automatically give the audience a time machine back to that time. Bro and Cell Block 99, when I saw the trailer, I was transported back to that time. I saw Vince Vaughn. I saw what Craig was doing. And I'm like, I'm there. And the music choices he did. And so I put Bronzy in this, and immediately I'm figuring half my audience is going to go, looks like Bronson. What are they going to think about? They're going to think about Death Wish, Breakheart Pass, Breakout, White Buffalo, The Dirty Dozen. You're going to go right back to a time frame where he had that run in the 70s and 80s that was just, Death Wish 8, just constant movie. And so it already gave the tone. And so I knew that would help transport us back. And then I wanted to make the movie not about technology. Movie's about a code of honor a handshake deal, whatever. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. That's what the movie's about. So this is sort of my homage back to those days I grew up at, wanting to make those movies. I finally made one. I think it fits there. And, while I was making it, the movie got bigger and it grew. And one of the things I was conscious is, it's dramatic, and I kept it going. And I tried to make left turns and right turns when you didn't know. But I was also conscious of what's going on today with all the Marvel movies. I mean, people are getting just tons of stuff. And the action movies, it's so over the top. The Marvel movies are so over the top, but you accept it. You accept Iron Man falling and bouncing on the ground, getting up, and he takes his helmet off, and he's got a little blood. And you're like, it's full 1,000 feet. You're a human inside that suit. I don't buy it, but we buy these things, the story. If it's a good story and you like the characters, you kind of accept the fact they can jump off if things blowing up, they could jump and grab onto the rope and hit the wall and it hurts, or James Bond. I mean, at least they show him getting beat up, he's got pain,
Right.
but he's still doing stuff. You're like, it's a little bit, so I kind of took the movie to a certain point and went, okay, now I got to pull out the stops. These guys are going to run out into a hailstorm of bullets and they're going to kill everybody. So I had a little bit of license. I thought I could bend the curve a little bit, give a little bit of that fun that a lot of young people today, a lot of people love the Marvel stuff and all the action things. I thought I could get that audience too, and I could still get the audience that loved those 70s things, which they'd have action and stuff, but it wasn't like if the car blew up, the guy died,
Right.
Today the car blows up, he flies out of the car and he's knocking the flames off, he hit his elbow. How come it's not broke, So I sort of did a bit of a hybrid. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just a complete throwback to where you weren't going to get, today people need to be satisfied. They need a ton of action,
Yeah, no downtime.
I got to have 40 minutes of action, your movie, because it's the residual effect. When you leave the movie, if you come out of a movie really loving the ending, you're going to tell people to watch it. So you get them in the first 10, 15 minutes and get them hooked. But then whatever you do, you got to give them a roller coaster at the end, or they're going to tell people not to watch it. So that's what I tried to do with this. I tried to balance the retro 70s feel with what people wanted today. And like, it's a bit over the top here, but it's okay. Walking a fine line.
Yeah, it sounds like just like when you were describing how you thought about making your first movie, is that you have all of these intelligent pieces, but it still serves you as an artist.
Yeah. I got to do all the things I wanted to do. And what was cool about it, writer, producing, and directing, I'm doing all those and financing most of it. I didn't have to answer to anybody like a studio. So I'd get to the set, I'd have a scene that'd say, the riot begins, the tide turns, the inmates take charge, guards are falling, like kindling. I could put a line in there like that, and then I could plan my action on the set. Whereas before, when I'm working on the other movies or I'm a hired hand, I have to have a complete shot list, storyboards. It's planned out, right? You're not changing on the set. Well, here I knew, I'm like, you know what? This guy's going to get the gun. I want you to be back there and run up and shoot from here. I'll put the muzzle flash in. You don't have to worry about the camera, So I was able to go, okay, safety won't be an issue here because you're going to use these, airsoft guns. So I was able to manipulate it, and I had a cast of wrestlers in the movie. So they all have got great characters. They can act and do a performance, and they can do stunts. So I got double duty out of all of that, So I was able to change things on the set and embellish the action. And that's, the movie kind of grew that way. It's like, I'm like, I really got to blow the doors off here. I got to make this scene bigger, or I really need to do a kill. This kill has to happen here. These guys got to get massacred here, or this thing has to happen there. And so I was able to engineer that without really spending more money on the set, knowing, okay, I'm going to have to do some green screen. I'll have to do some visuals later. So that gave me a bit of a freedom, but I'm in a framework, it's in a script. It's a framework. These arcs have to happen. These, this person has to make it out. This person has to die. It's all there. And, the dialogue's all there too. And then of course we add an extra line on the set, or the actors change it up a bit, or you get a inspiration for a line while you're shooting, like, oh, I need to put this line in here, So I had that kind of freedom with this, and I really enjoyed it. It's kind of going to be what I'm going to be doing, kind of moving forward. Very similar types of things, but you have to find the elements. I had the prison, big element.
Huge, yeah.
I met Chris Hahn and Jimmy Lee and all the wrestlers, and it's like a big element. It's a huge part of the movie. Meeting, Bronzy, another big element. Okay, I'll be able to handle the digital effects, a big element. So, excuse me. So it's all about getting the elements together, right? And getting enough for distribution and promotion together. And, we got Nick Turturro in there, who plays a great, great, I won't say villain. He wouldn't say villain. His character wouldn't say villain. But he's got a great part. And then Lawrence Hilton Jacobs came in and knocked it out of the park for Langley. And then local actors, Debbie Scaletta, who plays our warden Jack, female warden of the prison. She's got her harem of any pick of the guys she likes, and she can manipulate them all. She has all the, the cool tools to do that. And Linda Russell came in and plays Borelli, our detective, who sort of has a connection with Bronzy in the movie. So really rounded out that cast, and they're all characters. They all the pieces of the puzzle. Once again, it's finding the pieces to put together. The location, the prison's like it's a $10-20 million set. Well, I couldn't buy that. I couldn't build that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about putting those elements together, and kind of very much like I did Mosquito. But again, with a team of people and producers and partners, and it came together.
Yeah, it's awesome. You're super inspiring to listen to because I mean, you know what you're doing. You've put in the work. It's not like you fell into a career, but just your attitude of like, I want to do this thing, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and I'm going to get the pieces moving that I can, and I'll figure out the rest as I go. Like it's
Right.
awesome.
Right. Well, you have a plan and everything, but things change. You get curves. Every movie I've worked on, every day something doesn't work, or you don't get that location, or you don't have enough of something, or you run out of sun. There's always something. So the trick is always to be like, have a plan, but then be aware of what little you can get away with. That because you have to tell that story. Like if you're doing a scene, what's the most important part? Well, you got a big scene. But what do I really need to get out of the scene? And it's like something I learned from Francis Coppola, listening to him, and just other directors and Martin Scorsese and that, or even Spielberg. What does the audience need to know out of this scene? If you can't nail anything, this scene shouldn't be in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Why waste your time? So I was very conscious, like, why is this scene here? What do I need to get? And when I'm running out of time, I'm like, you know what? I'm shooting a close up of her doing that look. If I have time, I'll get her walking out the door. So you start to go, what's necessary? And audiences won't necessarily know, because they don't know what's missing. They only know what you present them. So just very conscious of what you need. And it's important. You have a script you believe in. But you have to ask yourself, what is this scene here for? Oh, because it's cool. All right. But can you give the audience a reason to want to, sure, it's cool, but put something in there that they need,
Right. Because even a cool scene could kill the pacing.
Yeah. I mean, I've planned these really big camera moves and crane shot and, big long dolly shot that takes 15, 16 seconds. Well, I got to tell you, every time I go into the edit room, that's the first thing that gets cut. Why? Because 15 seconds of screen time without giving the audience enough information is a waste of time. If you just want to wow them, it's 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Out of it. If you get to the end of that 15 seconds and you got a guy turning around and he's got a gun in his hand and you didn't know he had a gun, okay, you can get away with it. But, Scorsese would do that shot, follow him, in Goodfellas, follow him out of the car, down the, across the road, down the thing, and, through the back room, all the way up to the table, all the way up to the singer. Well, what did he do is he gave us all the information we needed to know. The couple coming together, going in the back door, handing off the money, getting the best table, and the famous singer that they got to see. You understood the complete lifestyle of what the gangster could do and what the money and the influence could do, right? So you got it out of it, it's
right.
necessary. So yeah, every time I do a big shot, I always go, this is cool, but am I going to cut the end of this off or the beginning? So it always happens. You always got to kill the best ones, and that's the problem with it. I did a lot of editing on this movie, and it's tough. I have to put a sign on the computer that says, kill the best shots, dump all the best shots, because invariably they may not be what you need. So I'm just aware of that now, and I just really try to make the plan. And the transitions are important. Trying to make sure, okay, if the scene's playing too long, I can still get out right here. This will be a good exit. And invariably, you cut dialogue and stuff, and I always trim at least 10, 15 minutes minimum out of every movie I make. I'm never short. I'm always a little long, and I kill those big long shots, that I still do, because I love them. Okay, there's enough information here. And then I get in the edit room. I go, nah, it's not enough. That's
yeah. Well, Gary, this has been incredible, and I hate to cut it short, but I don't want to eat up your entire day. can you tell everybody where they can find Escape from Death Block 13 and anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, so Escape from Death Block 13 is out. It came out yesterday. It will be on Amazon this by the end of this week. You know, we're basically all the transactional where we have to pay for it. It's on Spectrum, it's on DirecTV, on demand, Comcast, Cox Cable. It'll be on Google Play today, I think, and then iTunes next week. So wherever your cable station is, and even if you don't have the major ones, it's a lot of smaller stations too that they can get it and pay for it. And the DVD will come out at the end of the month around the 23rd, 24th. It'll be in Walmart exclusively, and you'll be able to get it on Amazon too. But right now it's on all the kind of the movie pay channels, you know, and in your cable stations. And we have deathblock13.com is the website. I'll be putting lots of stuff up there, reviews, and also information about where it's playing next. And then our Facebook page, Deathblock13 on Facebook, is also a place where you get a lot of information. And we've been putting up a lot of little videos and stuff, the promotional stuff. And I'm gonna put up some more kind of cool little things, little tidbits and stuff to things from the movie just out of context to get keep people up to breast on it. But yeah, those are the places to go. And my site, which it's under construction because I've been a little busy, is GaryJonesDirector.com, and also on YouTube, Gary Jones Director. So I'll be having a lot more stuff up in there, and also I'll be announcing the next project and when it's going to be starting and all that good stuff.
Very cool. Well, thank you again for taking the time. That was amazing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate being on. And look for Escape from Death Block 13. You're not going to be able to escape it. It's kind of going to be everywhere. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you. And I hope everybody enjoys the movie. And tell your friends. Tell 10 friends if you like it. If you don't like the movie, tell 5 friends.
I'd like to thank Gary one more time for coming on the show to talk to me all about his career, how to make things happen, how to get things done, what he's learned in the movie industry, and of course, Escape from Death Block 13, available now on VOD. Support this one. Not only is Gary awesome, but it's a pretty awesome movie. I'm going to hopefully have a review up for it on the site before too long. I wanted to already, but the screener didn't work. But at this point, I'm going to throw him a few bucks, and I'm just going to do it the proper way. We've got a lot more interviews, a lot more new movie coverage coming your way. You're not going to want to miss out. So make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Really helps us grow our audience, helps us deliver what you guys want to see. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. We'd love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All of our accounts will be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series. It's called Social Studies. It's a slice-of-life comedy comic about the high school experience, all the insanity and craziness that goes along with it. We write it like a sitcom, we keep it light, and the look is inspired by the 90s cartoons that we grew up on and inspired us. You can find all that and more, socialstudiescomic.com. We have 7 issues available now, available in individual issues, and pretty soon we're going to have the trade paperback that we did on our crowdfunding campaign just recently for. So it's a great time to catch up because Chapter 2 is launching in just a couple months. Thanks.